Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Shorts. This specimen here is the subject for today. Now, I know what y'all are thinking out there. Isn't that one of those crappy Carolina cherries that comes up all over the place in my yard? I hate those things. Why are you even talking about that? You would be wrong. This is not a Carolina cherry. This is an exotic plant, though it doesn't look it. And you definitely want one. Its common name, the one we know it most commonly by in the supermarket even, is Yerba Mate. Some of you are going, Yerba what? And the rest of you are going, wait, I've heard of that. Isn't that the one in, yeah, Yerba Mate is that plant. Yerba Mate is used because it is a natural source of caffeine. In fact, it is basically the thing, along with Guarana and other vitamin supplements, that gives a lot of energy drinks their caffeinated kick. And it also replaces the issues with fair trade and sustainable agriculture involving coffee. What's interesting is its scientific name, because it tells you a whole story. The scientific name for this plant is Ilex paraguariensis. Ilex is the scientific name for the holly family, which means, yes, it's related to hollies. And in fact, one of its cousins also produces caffeine. That would be Ilex vomitoria. Now before you go, did he just say puke? No. Vomitoria is a Latin word. It means a big opening. The opening in the Colosseum where people exited was called a vomitoria. So, it doesn't actually mean puking, though the Romans certainly had a word for that. We're not going to get into that in this video series. Now, paraguariensis means of Paraguay, which should tell you the sort of maybe endemic region that it came from. Now what's interesting is that it's native to southern Brazil and surrounding regions, so that matches up with the name. It's in the holly family, that matches. Now here's where it gets interesting, really interesting. This plant can be grown in USDA zones 9 through 11 in the ground. You can take that up to 4 through 8 if potted, and since I'm 8A, in a pot. Check and check. It prefers a soil pH of 5.8 to 6.8, which means you're probably going to have to hit it with holly tone in a pot or in the ground every year. And no, that's not a commercial ad. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Pun intended. The exposure it prefers is full sun, preferably with some afternoon shade, because otherwise it may roast a little in our hot laser southern sun that we got out here in North Carolina. Its height at maturity is 25 to 30 feet, while its spread at maturity is 20 to 30 feet. So it gets about as big, ironically, as a Carolina cherry, but it takes something like 20 years to get there, maybe? So it's a while. Carolina cherries are much faster growing, and I'm going to zoom in on some of the leaves just to show you the difference. Okay. The leaves on Yerba Mate, as you can see, are more oval-shaped, whereas the leaves on, well, they're more stretched oval, and then the leaves on a Carolina cherry are oval, but they're more regular, and they actually have a stem, whereas these leaves seem to just drop right off the. They don't have a petiole, that little stem that attaches the leaf to a stem, to a trunk or stem. So they don't really have much of that. This thing is a true holly in that regard. A lot of hollies don't have much of a petiole. But, moving along, alternative names for this plant, the only one I could successfully pronounce without invoking the wrath of long deceased ancestors of great Mesoamerican cultures is the Portuguese word for it, Yerba Mate. Now you see, this plant, Yerba Mate is a fairly modern name for the plant. It has a lot of names, and 90% of them I don't dare try to pronounce because I know I'm going to butcher it worse than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Also poltergeists. Last thing you want to do is summon some Aztec death god by accidentally mispronouncing something about Yerba Mate. Bad for property values, folks. Now here's some interesting facts. The plant was named by French botanist Augustin Saint-Hilaire, which is how it got one of its first European name. The toasted leaves and or fresh green leaves are used to make the Yerba Mate tea beverage, which is drank hot, out of a specific decorated gourd. What's interesting is in the growth habit. Now I mentioned that it could get to 30 feet tall. Well, these plants start out as a shrub and eventually mature into a full tree form. I've sort of mentioned that before, but I'm mentioning it again. So, if you're planting this for the long haul in the ground, expect to give it room. Treat it as though it will be a tree and it's growing at the pace of roughly a dog would. Oddly enough, though, the potency of the caffeine content varies on environmental factors and the gender of the plant. You see, with Yerba Mate, there are male and female plants, which is interesting. But what gets more interesting is that male plants have a higher caffeine content and a more pungent flavor, whereas female plants are milder in flavor and have a lower caffeine content. As I noted before, it's kind of a slow grower, which is, whatever. But in plantation usage, because this plant has been moved in plantations, this plant is cloned a lot. And, well, basically the plantations are full of male plants. I mean, if that isn't the definition of a horticultural sausage party, then I don't know what it is. Can you just imagine that? If the plants could talk, it'd be something like, bro, I'm growing caffeine, bro. But I'm going to leave that wackiness to your imagination. Now, why should you have one of these, and where can you get one? Now, the where can you get one part, I'm not doing that to advertise these places, I'm just telling you. If you're in North Carolina, you can go to Big Bloomers in Sanford. That's where I got this plant specimen. I saw it in one of their greenhouses, and it was a total impulse buy that broke that visit's budget. I'm okay with that. I think it was like 20 bucks. Yeah, I think that's a fair 20 bucks spent, in my opinion. Fight me. Anyway, now the second fact is that the other places that I've found it, I believe One Green World has it, and then there may be one or more other catalogs that actually have Yerba Mate plants. If you're going to order it by mail, you might as well go and order it now, ASAP, because it's getting towards the point of the year where temperatures are going to start to drop in certain portions of the country, and they may or may not ship. You may have to wait till next year, in fact. Now, the other interesting thing about this is since it's a holly plant, and since we already know, as I mentioned, Ilex vomitorium is the other one that produces caffeine, there may be other hollies that produce caffeine as a chemical defense and for our benefit. That's not clear. What is clear is that this plant here has grown quite a bit since I got it. It was a smaller specimen. And if only for bragging rights of saying, I have caffeine, that may be why you should get it. If you want something super cool and exotic, and it doesn't look exotic so you can mess with people, that's why you should get this plant. Now, I believe that brings to a close our video, so if you like this video, hit the like, subscribe, throw up some comments on that page, haha, vomitorium pun, and keep them growing, folks. Stay tuned for our next exotic video. Oh, that's going to be fun.